Good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday evening. I'm Kath Lloyd from Make the Change, and it's Let's Talk. And I'm just going to forewarn you. Developed a cold yesterday, so hopefully we can get through this in one piece without any sneezing or coughing. So anyway, tonight's Let's Talk is You, the Caveman. And there's a lot of conversation about fight, flight, freeze, and now fawn is added, and about how our bodies respond when we're put into stressful situations, and this is all stemming from the primitive part of our brain from when we were cavemen and cave women. But in this day and age, it's very different, isn't it? Because we haven't got the lions about to attack us. Occasionally we might be put in a situation where we feel extremely frightened, we feel extremely vulnerable. That might be about walking down the street, perhaps late at night, or even in the day. It might be in the workplace, it might be in the home. But what I really want to talk about tonight is how we manage ourselves when we are in a traumatic situation. Okay, and this situation might not just be something that is going to be over quite quickly. This might be about something that is going to take maybe hours, days, or even weeks or months to resolve itself, and how you manage to conduct yourself or control yourself through the different stages of a very, very difficult situation. And I was doing a talk the other day at a Wellness for Women event, and I was talking about the fight, flight, freeze situation, but I also added on, or you're going to sit in the corner and cry. And some brave lady said, that's me, I'll sit in the corner and cry. And that is about, to me, the sitting in the corner and crying is about perhaps all of these different things happening at the same time, and you don't know what to do about it, because crying is a release of emotion, isn't it? It's a release of energy, just like laughing is, or coughing, or sneezing, something like that. And it's also going to affect you in different ways depending on how you are feeling physically yourself. So I know that when I'm not feeling very well, or if I've got a cold, for example, I can be a lot more emotional. And this as well, especially with significantly outlined with women, but it can happen with men as well, because they will go through ups and downs with their hormones. That wherever you are at with your hormones is going to make a huge impact on how you react in different situations. Okay, so when you are faced with a traumatic situation, you won't know really how you're going to react until you are in that situation. Obviously, experience will guide us, but hopefully, not too many of us are going to have that many traumatic experiences going on in our lives for us to be able to find, what our triggers are, what, the symptoms are, and then be able to manage the situation the best that you can do. And when we're put into very traumatic situations, a lot of the time we find it most difficult. What we find most difficult is the lack of control. Okay, so say if your mother or father or a close friend, or just a very, very close relative or a close friend is is suddenly very poorly and is in hospital, how do you know how you're going to react? Sometimes, if you're going to if you're going to be very, very frightened, some people just run away from the situation. And this is where, the reptilian brain comes in, isn't it? Some people will not be able to go to the hospital and face the situation. So that is them running away from it, isn't it? Other people might go in and start being really quite argumentative and aggressive, maybe with the staff. And some people will just sit at home and not know what to do about any of the situation. They might sit in the corner and cry. And when I was talking about this the other week with a friend of mine, and she was talking about her parents and how poorly her dad had been. And, she said that my mother is one of those that will sit in the corner and cry. She will not have a clue as to what to do, how to react, how to support anybody, let alone herself, in a situation like this. But it might be that you go through, over a period of time, a variety of these different things, because at the beginning you're going to be in shock. And this is where, you start behaving perhaps out of character when you're in shock. Some people will go straight into action mode. You hear stories, don't you, of a mother lifting a car to save their child. That is the body going into action, isn't it? And fighting the situation, and the adrenalin has taken over and has pumped that mother's body full of, oxygen, and sent the blood supply to the muscles with the right, endorphins to get her in motion so that she can act and she can save her child from being crushed from under that car. And then it might be that later on, that when the information starts to sink in, that's when you start to freeze. Because and when you're freezing like that, it's your brain has gone very still. And it is very, very difficult to think, but it's about your body giving itself time to be able to process the information. Process the information so that you can find the right answers as to know what to do. And then, of course, the other situation is what they call fawn, which is about there's nothing that you can do. You can't fight it. You can't run away from it. You've tried all your different options. And then the fawn stage is about accepting the situation. And this often happens, in people who are abused. And they get used to the situation. They get used to the stress levels. There was a wonderful lady that I used to teach with, and her dad used to knock her about. And she went through years and years and years of not knowing what to do about it. She was young, she was vulnerable. This was a dad who she should be respecting and she should be trusting. But then suddenly she got to the stage where she, after her dad had physically, knocked her about, just turned round to him and said, "I love you, Dad. I love you so much." And her dad was so shocked by what she'd said, he never did it again. Now, I don't really understand that. I'm not a psychologist, but to me, that is a very, very powerful message. Her instinct finally took over, and instead of being the victim, she started to take control of the situation and confront her father, not aggressively, but in a very loving manner. And I think it must have just taken him totally by surprise, and he just withdrew from, the person he was acting out as, and never did it again. So that is another very powerful way of how our brains can work in different ways. So what I'm trying to say here is that there's no rhyme or reason a lot of the time why we act or react in the ways that we do. And there are going to be times when you're perhaps so distraught about the situation that even your brain, will be going into some overdrive situation where you feel helpless. You feel that there's no way out, and there's no way out to escape from what you're thinking. And then, so, sometimes you might say, well, okay, I need to, I've got to take action here. And, the action might be helping the professionals to care, pulling together as a group of people, whether it's family and friends, pulling together to do the best that you can do for the person who needs the support. And this is where we have evolved as people, isn't it, as human beings, and we are taking a different side. And I think sometimes that, this fight, flight, freeze, fawn situation is perhaps a very masculine way of looking at it. And, I know that we're all, we're striving for equality, but there is I feel a definite difference between the male and the female brain, and we will react differently. And, when you watch, nature programs, we've got Dynasty on at the moment on a Sunday night, or Dynasties, it's the female, it's often the female, the strongest female in the pack that is leading the herd, that is caring for the young, still bringing, babies into the world, yet still leading, the pack at the same time. And so we can take on these different roles to help not only ourselves, but vulnerable people around us as well. But what is important is you also need to look at your own vulnerability as well, and take that into consideration and get the support where you need it. And that's going to come in all different shapes. I'm sorry, it's not really working today, is it? It's going to come in different shapes, sizes and forms. And sometimes, that support might be from something very, very different. It might be something, that you read. That support might come from prayer, from chanting, from meditation, from mindfulness, from talking to other people, from talking to professionals, or just talking to, people who love you, who respect you. And, there's no shame in having to seek that support to find what you need to be able to give you the strength to take the right action to get or to start achieving the results that you want to be able to manage the situation. And there are going to be times when you're going to be angry and your adrenaline's going to kick in and you can feel your blood boiling and your blood pressure going up and your heart rate going, and you want to fight the world. That is a natural reaction. And there's going to be other times where you just think, I just can't do this today and I need to go and have a break, and I need to go and perhaps not run away from the situation, but have a breather from the situation. And there's going to be times when you just don't know what to do, and you are going to have a good cry in the corner. And that is all normal when you are thrown into very, very difficult situations. And, to be able to come out the other side in one piece is accepting that and acknowledging that as a human being, that you're going to have all of these difficult emotions and conflicting arguments going on around in your head. And, the sooner that you start to acknowledge and accept them, the easier it will be to be able to manage them and come out of it a whole person. Because if you don't accept these as ups and downs, as yes, they are natural emotions. You might class them as faults, but you've got to put it into perspective around the situation that you are in at the moment, at that time. And if you chastise yourself for them, this is where in the long run you might develop more problems or more issues of conflict within yourself, which isn't going to help anybody, especially you, and especially the person that needs your help and needs your support as you go through. So if you're struggling with managing your fight, flight, freeze, fawn, sitting in the corner crying, then I've got my top 10 tips to keeping yourself sane. And so that can be found on my website, www.kathloyd.co.uk. And if you have got through the major trauma and you're now having to manage yourself longer term, then in the back of my book, When Dad Became Joan, Life with My Transgender Father, in part 2, it's the 7 steps to living your normal. So it's about the 7 strategies in how to create your normal or your new normal, which might happen when you're in situations like this, so that you can start to live and be the person that you want to be, that you need to be able to have a normal life again. And my book can be found on Amazon, or again it can be found on my website, www.kathloyd.co.uk. So just before I go, whatever difficult situation that you are going through at the moment, my first tip of my top 10 tips to keeping yourself sane is remember to breathe. Good breathing, not shallow little breathing like this, but nice, deep, relaxed breathing. So, that your body is going to stay healthier. You're going to have a good oxygen supply into your blood system, blood supply, and around to your organs. So with that one little top tip in place, I'm going to love you and leave you. Have a great evening, have a great week, and I'll speak to you next Wednesday at 8 o'clock for Let's Talk. Bye bye now.